Hello, hello, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whatever it happens to be for you, wherever you are in the world. This is Beyond the Looking Glass. I'm Ravana, and I have a special guest tonight. But before I introduce him, I am going to talk a little bit about today, and it being the 26th of April. It's the golden birthday of the second greatest nuclear disaster in modern history, and that would be Chernobyl. Yep, Chernobyl turned 26 years old today. And as of about 2 days ago, I saw a news article where they mentioned the nuclear remediation, the decontamination of the soil and everything, is basically pointless. And that is going to be a no go zone for at least the next couple of centuries. And, as far as Fukushima goes, it's at least 3 to 5 times as bad. I mean, there's 3 reactors that have gone up. They were old reactors, not a new reactor like in Chernobyl. And then now it comes out that there's possible melt through meltdown at Daini. But just because it's the birthday of that, so we're gonna jump on to our guest here. We have Glenn Winningham with us. Hey, Glenn, how's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So you were gonna start off with a visit you had by some individuals down in Texas.
Yes, this was about a year ago. It was a little more than a year ago. It was a year ago last March, early in March, a year ago. And the FBI, and there was a knock at my door. I was in my travel trailer. I travel a lot, and there was a knock at my door, and there was two gentlemen outside, and they said, "Yes, Mr. Fern. My name is I can't remember what it's. I got his name written down here, but anyways, he said his name, and he says, "I'm with the FBI, and this is." And the other guy was with the Texas Department of Public Safety, and we'd like to talk to you if we could for a few minutes. And so I said, sure. And I stepped outside, and we talked. Um, during that conversation, we talked for about a half an hour. Had a nice talk. It's very cordial, and in my opinion, and they told me, or at least the FBI agent never did say anything. He actually kept saying it was my personal beliefs. He called them my beliefs. Um, but the Texas Department of Public Safety officer, they were both plain clothes, no uniforms or anything like that. The Texas state police officer told me 3 times that I'm listed as sovereign in their system, and the third time I was sitting there thinking, okay, well, you told me this twice before now. Yeah. So, they told me that I'm listed as sovereign in their system. Um, and so I guess
Yeah,
that's about
that's
it.
that's pretty amazing. I mean, most of the time when people talk about being sovereign and whatever, they don't really understand what they're trying to talk about. Um, my understanding is that the sovereignty side of it, if you're listed as sovereign, that means basically you are operating on the same or a similar level to the state, where the state is a sovereign, not the federal jurisdiction of the state, but say uh, what, California Republic, I think, is what it was originally founded as, or whatever the original state was named. And by doing that, like with there's 2 levels of passports, and if you have a sovereign passport, that means that you're traveling not as a possession or a slave of the United States, but as a sovereign, quote unquote, or um, diplomatic officer, basically.
I don't have one of those passports, if that's what you're thinking. But I can tell you what the courts are saying, and you're right. The courts are saying that the only power held by the government is power that was delegated by we the people, and there is nothing the government can do to affect the people, and that's why actually they did that, quite frankly, because what I do is wherever I travel, I send a registered letter to like the Attorney General in whatever state I happen to be in, and I also send one to the Chief Judge in the county, and the Chief of Police in the city, and the County Sheriff, and the prosecutor. All of those type of people, I send them a registered letter, and I tell them. Well, it started out about 8 or 9 pages, and now it's at like about 20 pages. But it's got lots of court citations and things like that in it. And one of the things that I tell them is that you have no more authority over me than a Walmart rent-a-cop. And so I put them in the position. See, you have to understand that everything's under martial law. I don't know. Are you aware of that?
That's Title 50 of the War Powers Act.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure that it's that has anything to do with it. It may, but actually, it's been under martial law rule. There's 3 kinds of martial law. There's a Supreme Court case that talks about it. It's called Ex parte versus Milligan. It's an early 1800s Supreme Court case, and it talks about there's 3 kinds of martial law. The first kind of martial law is martial law proper. Actually, we'll go to full martial law. Full martial law is when you've been invaded by a foreign country, or they have to put down an armed rebellion, and so they have troops on the street, and that's full martial law. Then there's martial law proper. Martial law proper is the law of the armed forces. It's what a captain tells a private what to do, and that's enforced by court-martials. And then there's martial law rule, and martial law rule is very subtle. It's emergency rule, or the law of necessity, but it does happen. Matter of fact, we've been under martial law for decades, if not since the Civil War. And there's lots of evidence of it too. And so, anyways, the reason I mention that is that martial law works on presumption. Number one, it works on presumption, and so they presume certain things until you defeat their presumptions. And number two, it's voluntary. You have to volunteer into it, and they have some ways that they get you to volunteer into it. But if you don't volunteer into it, then they don't have any authority. And everybody in the government, because it's all martial law, none of them have any authority. And when you start telling them that they don't have any authority, you put them in the position it's a felony to violate your rights under the color of law under their codes. And so you put them in the position of being exposed to that. And once you set them up for that, then all of a sudden they don't want to talk to you anymore. It's amazing how that works.
Yeah. Okay, you talked about there's several pages, like 20 pages that you send off. One of the things that I'm looking at, and this is Minnesota Rules of Practice, rule number 220, and it talks about the birth certificate. And it says that what you need to do is you take a copy of your birth certificate and you basically write an affidavit stating that these are the facts as you understand them, that you are competent to conduct your own affairs, you are of the age of majority, no longer incompetent or a ward of the state or, list whatever, and basically have it signed by 3 witnesses and notarized, and you mail it back to the state. And that I'm not sure what you would actually call that, but it's a way of reinstating yourself as the living human being, not as the ward of the state and the incompetent and everything else that they consider you.
Well, I've never heard of that, quite frankly, and I certainly haven't done that. I think that they know that everybody's sovereign, but you have to assert it. In other words, what happens is they pass laws that really apply to nobody. A good example is a Social Security number. There's laws that say that a U.S. citizen has to get a Social Security number. Well, first of all, the law that says that is not positive law, and so therefore it's not a law. That's in the Social Security Act. Okay, the Social Security Act is not positive law. In other words, it wasn't properly enacted. There's certain things that have to happen for an act to be properly enacted, and so what happens is that if it's not properly enacted, it's actually it's federal laws. You can go to the U.S. Congress website called the Office of Law Revision Council, and they'll tell you what acts, what titles of the United States Code are positive law, and there's actually very few of them that are. Anyways, what happens is if it's not positive law, then it's not a law, but the burden's on you to bring up the issue. So, but what happens is that Social Security number is a perfect example. It's not positive law, but so the courts view it that you're supposed to know the law. So if you went out and got a Social Security number, then you're supposed to know the law. It's a contract. You've agreed to it. And so, as with any contract or fraudulent contract, the burden's on you to bring up that issue. And that's essentially what I do. Is I tell them that I'm the king, that the only power that you have over me is power that I delegated, and I am the government, and these are the kinds of things I say in there, and it puts them in a position to where they know I'm right, and my public servants will take care of it. In other words, I can't tell you how many people I've had removed, because a good example is the Pennsylvania Attorney General. I sent one of my notices to the Pennsylvania Attorney General, and what happened is one of his flunkies sent me back. One of the things I say in my letter is I'm going to be traveling in your state with my private property, my private conveyance, and I don't have a driver's license. And you know, like I said before, you don't have any more authority over me than a Walmart rent-a-cop. And so, anyways, this assistant attorney general for Pennsylvania sent me a letter saying, if you drive in Pennsylvania, we're going to arrest your butt and take you down and put you in jail. And so, what I did, they sent me back my letter that I'd sent them with all of their stamps all over, saying they'd received it and everything. So that was great evidence. So I put that all together with a criminal complaint, and I sent it to the U.S. attorney. The U.S. attorney sent me a letter saying that they'd referred it to the FBI. And then a couple of months later, I was looking on the Pennsylvania Attorney General's website, and they had an acting Attorney General there. Okay, and so I got his butt removed. He could be in jail right now. I don't know, but the point is that we really do have a good government. If it's running away with itself, it's because we are asleep at the wheel, and we are not asserting ourselves. We've abdicated our responsibility, and we haven't. We're not asserting our lawful, legitimate authority as sovereigns, and so. And that's what I do, and I do that everywhere I go because there's so many people. I kind of go overboard probably because there's so many people that are so ignorant of this that I try and make up for it, and I believe that it has a positive effect because they don't know that guy they're stopping. They don't know if that's me or someone else. So they have to be that much more careful. They have to be that much more polite. They have to be that much more, forgiving with everybody else because they don't know if it's me or not. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to backtrack for a second there. You started on the Social Security numbers. Now the social security number is somewhat attached to your driver's license in that it's pretty hard to get a driver's license if you don't have a social security number. And the driver's license is the state issued driver's license is basically your corporate franchise. And that's how they get you into all this court stuff because the courts are administrative. So, like in my case, they didn't renew my driver's license. So, for all intents and purposes, I no longer have a corporate franchise under which to operate. Now, I still have the Social Security number because I'm on disability. And,
Well,
I took that because I was in the Army and whatever. But,
well,
right.
I was in the Air Force way back when too, but quite frankly, my attitude is, and I've been to the Supreme Court 3 times, so I know how to file lawsuits and I know how to take them appeal. The first time I went to the Supreme Court, I was suing the IRS because they were stealing my money, and I put an affidavit into the Supreme Court saying I swear under penalty of perjury that I do not have a Social Security number. I have never had a Social Security number, and I guess the point I'm trying to make is that if you want it to be you, then you're a slave. But really, what that thing is a Sestakay trust. It's not your number; it's a number for a trust. And when you say it's yours, you're essentially saying I want to accept responsibility for that fictitious entity. And if that's the case, then you just said you're a slave. Because if they can take 1 penny from you arbitrarily, they're essentially making you work for that penny. They're making you work for that penny for nothing, and so that's slavery. That's the definition of slavery: making you work for nothing. Don't get me going about that. Quite frankly.
Well, okay. Well, hold on. Let's talk about the Sesquicavi trust funds and all that because it's my understanding that part of that goes back to when the United States was declared bankrupt in the 30s and it was placed into receivership. And then, in order to create money, they basically said, okay, we'll create these accounts, you'll have access to it, but we get ownership of everything. You get a title, you get the certificate of title, but we keep the title itself and then we can securitize that. And they kind of hoodwinked everybody. And that's what the trust fund is how they're funding everything on the CAFR accounts. And on the public side, they're saying, oh, we're broke and we need to tax you guys. No.
Well, first of all, you have to understand that they don't have authority. I cannot. Can I? The question I have is can I take money from you and give it to some guy down the street because he doesn't have any money?
No.
Well, then, if I can't, neither can the government, because the only power the government has is power that I delegated. So if they're taking money from you, they're not taking it from you. They're taking it from that trust, from that Sestakay trust, from a fictitious entity, because that is what they have authority over. And so what you have to do, if you want them to stop taking your money, is make sure that they know what I do, okay, I can tell you what I do, is I don't use a Social Security number for anything. The only time my straw man does have a driver's license, if I get stopped by the cops, they don't ask for the straw man's driver's license, they ask for mine. So I don't have one, and that's why I send out a registered letter to them telling them I don't have one, because I don't. They ask, if they were to ask for the straw man's driver's license, that'd be different. But they never do. And so the only time I ever pull out the driver's license is if I want to rent a car. And you won't rent me a car unless I pull out a driver's license. So that's the only time I ever pull it out. I've made up my own ID. If the police stop me, that's the only thing they ever get. And I've never had a problem with the police. The only time I've ever had a problem with my homemade ID is with some brain-dead clerk or something at some store that wants ID because I want to use a credit card or something, and they don't want to accept it. And so
Right.
that's the only time I have those kinds of problems.
Well, and the driver's license is if you're renting a vehicle, then you're in commerce, and therefore you have to have the driver's license because it's commercial.
Yeah, I don't dispute that, but that's the only time I ever pull it out. And
Right.
so, what happens is that, in my opinion, just having the driver's license by itself is not the contract. The contract is when you pull it out and give it to them, and that's the contract. You're essentially saying that you want to be the surety for their fictitious entity, and that's the contract. That's what gets you in. And then once you've done that, then it becomes very difficult to try and get out of that, especially if you want to start arguing common law and all that stuff, because you just took yourself out of the common law jurisdiction by doing that. And in that jurisdiction where that is, there is no common law. And in the martial law jurisdiction, there's no common law. And I know people that have tried to argue that in court, and the court will say the common law doesn't apply here, and I don't want to hear another word about it. And they'll be correct.
So in that case, you would have to, let me see, you could request a venue because if they're breaking, say, if they're breaking law, quote unquote, of the Constitution and positive law, but they're doing it in an administrative court, how do you get them back to where they have to obey the Constitution?
Once you've done that, see, that's the thing, is that there's no such thing as a sovereign in commerce. So that's one thing that I'm very careful about doing is I don't go into commerce, quite frankly, or at least I rarely do. Because once you go into commerce, you give up your sovereignty, and you cannot get it back. As long as during that commercial transaction, you cannot get it back, or it's very, very difficult. And there's really no such thing as a sovereign in commerce. If you get it back, it's because they had mercy on you and they felt like doing it because they really didn't have to. Because it's a contract. You've agreed to it, and that's why you see these people that they get a ticket. Well, if you gave a driver's license or some government issued ID to get then and they give you that ticket, well then there's a contract, and now you could deal with it in commerce. Now some people know how to, like pursuant to Regulation Z, you can reject their offer of contract within 72 hours and things like that. Well, that's all in commerce, and so you could deal with it in commerce, but if you try and start dealing with it in common law, it's not going to work too well.
Okay, right on. Yeah, see, I'm like I had mentioned when I talked to you on Sunday's show, dealing with the situation of a bench warrant and stuff, and I'm trying to figure out how to deal with that because the situation is, I believe it's criminal conspiracy, and whatever else you want to call it, but basically they told me to go and camp somewhere that I could have everything there, and then showed up 10 days later when the limit for camping in any one spot is supposed to be 14 days, but they showed up in 10 days and wrote me a bunch of tickets, and there was a few other things involved, but basically it's, the whole thing is I was told that, go and camp here and we won't mess with you. And then the cop comes down and writes me the tickets. So, I mean, come on. And I said that to him. I explained that I was told this is where to go. I went and talked to the Forest Service, blah, blah, blah. And his only response to that part of it was, well, she doesn't have the authority. Well, if she doesn't have the authority, then why is she telling me to go and camp there? She obviously, since she's worked there for 20 years, she knows what she has the authority to do and not do. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's just a joke to me, really. I mean, the fact that I have the warrant isn't a joke, but the rest of it is just laughable now.
Did you produce a driver's license or anything like that?
Eventually, yes, I did, because he was being somewhat belligerent about it.
Well, So in that case, then that's going to be difficult. But you could argue that they demanded it, and it was an unlawful search, and so therefore it's not admissible as evidence in your case. That would be the way I would approach it, and then bring up the issue of sovereignty. And there's lots of cases about state citizens. They don't have authority unless they've got a contract for a state citizen, and that's the argument: is you're not a U.S. citizen, you're a state citizen, and a citizen of I guess Minnesota, and they don't have any authority. And their statutes call of law, and you just go down the list. There's a whole bunch of things you could hit them with.
Yeah, and see, that's where I'm at. Is I'm looking at the fact that there has to be signs every so often demarking the border of the national forest. And one of the people that I've talked to said, "This is my land." And so, by his word, it's private property, and I'm trying to establish that through figuring out the township and range and everything else, but I can't find the signs for where it marks the border. So it might not even have been Forest Service land that they wrote me the ticket on. So I mean, there's a bunch of things that I'm trying to deal with this whole situation. It's just ridiculous, like I said. But yeah.
Yeah, as far as Forest Service land is concerned, I mean, there's doesn't the Forest Service basically lay out a certain area, and there could be private property in there and everything?
Well, see, that's the thing is okay, I'm a member of the mining club out here, and it's part of one of the mining claims. And technically, quote unquote, the Forest Service keeps an eye on it. Now, it's just a generic camping area for whoever to use if you're one of the club members, or if you're not a club member, the normal thing is you can stay 14 days. Anyone can, anywhere in the national forest, and the rules are you can't, build any structures and blah blah blah, whatever. But the thing is that I think it's private property, but I'm trying to figure out to actually have a document so that I can show them as private property, because at that point, then they don't even have jurisdiction.
Well, I mean, there's all sorts of reasons. I mean, that's where I'd go to the Office of Law Revision Counsel, because I can guarantee you their act is not positive law, and they don't even have title. Matter of fact, what I'd like to do, quite frankly, is get some First Nations de jure chief to grant me some BLM land. And I'd be prepared to go and take it and notice the government and tell them I'm taking this land taking possession of this land because I've got a superior title to your title, and I think that they wouldn't want to talk about that in court. I tell them, if you want to talk about it in court, no problem, but otherwise I'm taking possession of this land, and so I guess my point is that. It's color of title is what it is, and what they do is they go and sell the land to some corporation. The land patent is actually the proper title. It's the best title, I should say, besides the First Nations title. The problem is the First Nations people don't know the power of their position, and so trying to get one to cooperate with you on this is very difficult. But the thing is that...
Hold on one second. I want to backtrack 1 second. Okay, you mentioned citizenship and state citizenship. Now, that would be 14th Amendment United States citizenship versus 10th Amendment state, being Wisconsin, Minnesota, New York, whatever citizenship, correct?
Well, I wouldn't call it 10th Amendment. I'd call it preamble citizenship versus 14th Amendment citizenship. Matter of fact, the 14th Amendment is a fraud. It's actually a revision. I got court cases to talk about it. It wasn't properly enacted. It's a fraud. It's a nullity. It doesn't exist. But In the meanwhile, if you claim that you're a U.S. citizen, then you're basically saying that that you're a slave, because the courts have said that that the U.S. the 14th Amendment is for the slaves, and
Right.
so if you claim that you're a U.S. citizen in any way, then you're a slave. You're a piece of property.
Yeah. Yep. The other thing I was gonna say was, shoot, forgot what it was.
There's also court cases that say that and that's the reason they see this stuff about these elections and how they're rigging these elections. Well, I can show you court cases that say that U.S. citizens don't have any political power, and if they get to make any decisions on legislation, it's because the government feels like letting them have a decision, or it's just something to make them look like they're making a decision on it. I can show you court cases that talk about that.
Right.
So they go and rig the elections and just put on a big charade. The elections are all just a big charade.
Yeah. Great book by Lysander Spooner. What was it? No Treason, the Constitution of No Authority. He basically just goes through and explains how, secret balloting and delegate voting and all this stuff is basically just the art of highwaymen, and how it's a contract and nobody alive today signed it, and this, that, and the other thing. And it's about 2 hours long. It's on YouTube. It's really good. Great little education for anyone who's interested in the whole topic. But what would be your opinion on that? Like, this is one of the things I've thought about, is getting a copy of the early Constitution and getting it printed out onto a piece of parchment, signing it, having it notarized, and anytime one of these cops walks up to you, have them read it and sign it.
But I mean, let's face it. Unless you can do something, you can do that. But how are you going to call them a liar if they said, "Well, I don't know anything about that"? And they have an oath of office. They know they have an oath of office, and that's why I do what I do, because I serve it on them by registered mail. And matter of fact, what I was doing in Texas is I was involved with the Republic of Texas, and I had a judge from the Republic of Texas operate as a third-party witness for me, and so now you have a de jure judge that is affecting service, and so they can't call him a liar, and the de jure judge is operating as a third-party witness. He's witnessing the contents of the envelope. He's taking it to the post office, handing it to the clerk, and then he's certifying that there was no response. And they cannot deny it. And because otherwise, if you don't do that, I mean, some of them are crooks, and they'll say, "Well, I didn't get anything," and what are you going to call them, a liar?
We got a question. Glenn, can you speak a little more about martial law and how we give our consent? Volunteer.
Well, there's lots of court cases that talk about it. Let me pull up one of my PowerPoint presentations, but there's actually lots of court cases that talk about it.
One other thing I wanted to ask was, I remember what I was going to mention before. Public versus private. Now, say the District Court of the United States, or say your county courthouse, is that a public court or is that a private court?
They're all private. There's no, they're de facto. They're all de facto. They're run by bar members. All bar members are foreign agents of the Vatican, and they're all private. It's a religious ceremony.
Yeah, it's all corporate and administrative.
Absolutely, and the only de jure courts are ones that we the people set up, and none of them are set up by that. You tell them you want a jury of your peers of state citizens, and they don't have authority to subpoena a jury of state citizens, and
right.
so they'll dismiss the case based on that if you push the issue hard enough. Here's a court case. This is called.
The other way to go would be a civil grand jury. Possibly?
No, because their grand juries are all regulated as well.
Okay. Okay.
But you can convene your own grand jury, and they've done that in Texas. And there was actually in the 90s there was a guy that got his rights violated by the city of Garland, Texas, and what happened was he went and brought it. The Republic of Texas has been operating in Texas for quite some time. Anyway, so he went and took it to a Republic of Texas grand jury, and they indicted the city of Garland, and then they put him on trial, and they sent him summonses, and they didn't show up, so they held the trial anyways, and they convicted him, and then they sent the conviction to Dun & Bradstreet and Standard & Poor's, and the city of Garland couldn't get insurance, they couldn't get bonds, they couldn't sell any of their bonds, they couldn't do anything on Wall Street. And so what happened then is the city of Garland hired an attorney to go before one of the de facto courts in Texas and asked them to overturn that conviction. And you know what the judge said in that matter?
Tough shit.
Essentially, he said, I can't do that. If I did that, I'd lose my bond.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome.
And so, but that's the bottom line, is that's the power of the people, and that's what we have to do, is we have to get together, and we have to, our de jure government is the same everywhere. Our de jure government is sitting there dormant, waiting for us to operate it, and all we have to do is start operating it. And meanwhile, we have a bunch of pirates that are operating on the high seas of commerce, looking for some prize. That's exactly what's going on. Anyways, here's a court case, City of Dallas versus Mitchell, that's found at 245 Southwest 944, and it says, quote, the rights of individuals are restricted only to the extent that they have been voluntarily surrendered by the citizenship to the agencies of government, unquote.
Yep, that says it right there.
Here's another one. This is called Cruden versus Neal, and that's 2 North Carolina 338. It's also found at 2 Southeast Reports, page 70. Anyways, quote, the state citizen is immune from any and all government attacks and procedure absent contract. See Dred Scott versus Sanford, 16 U.S. 393, or as the Supreme Court has stated clearly, every man is independent of all laws except those prescribed by nature. He is not bound by any institutions formed by his fellow men without his consent, unquote.
Wow, that is truly profound. I would have never known. Just listening to that, I just want to say that can I get that case from you? And where do you get your cases from, Glenn? Do you have access to, or do you have to? How much research goes into all these cases that you have, that you've studied, that you use in your talks and stuff? How much research do you have in all that? How hard is it for the layman like me to get those resources?
Actually, the internet is full of this kind of stuff. I mean, there's websites. There's a website called Justia, www.justia.com, justia.com. On there, you can find every Supreme Court decision back to in the late 1700s. They don't go back all the way to 1776, but they go back to like the 1790s for sure. Anyways, plus you have a lot of district court cases. There's there's very few that aren't on that website. What I used to do is I used to actually go in the law library and confirm a lot of these cases. Nowadays you can do a lot of it on the internet, and so most of these cases, most of the cases I've actually read in the law books and verified that it does say exactly what it says. Some of them I haven't, I'll be honest with you. But it's not that difficult. I collect this stuff. I've been collecting it for decades, and I've got DVDs full of this stuff, and I look through them from time to time, looking for stuff that I'm looking for, and then I put it into my PowerPoint presentations.
Do you ever use, or have you ever used Find Law? I've used that before, and it's pretty good.
Used what?
Find Law, capital F
Oh
I
yeah,
N D Law. Yeah.
yeah, right.
Uh,
Yeah, sure. There's nothing wrong with that.
yeah, I was going to ask you. Private Attorney General, granted by Congress 1866 and 1979. Does that ring a bell for you or anything?
I know some people that do that, but that's a person. I don't do anything that makes me a person, and so I pretty well stay away from that. Um, at some point I might decide to do something like that, but at this point in time, I stay away from anything that might make me a person.
Well, that would be just like having the driver's license, though. If you need it, you can pull it out and use it if you need to, and otherwise, it just sits in your pocket.
Yeah, that's fine. So you can go ahead and do it if you want, but I'm not gonna right now.
I was just wondering your opinion on it because are you familiar with Rod Class from South Carolina?
I've heard of them.
Okay, he does some really, really good stuff, really interesting, and he is a private attorney general, and he uses that status to basically uh, correct them when they start stepping over the line, I guess you would say. And he does a lot of it just through paperwork, also.
Yeah, but in my opinion, you got to make yourself a person to do it, and it exposes you. And I've seen court cases where the courts have gone after people that claimed they were a private attorney general, and so you got to have your ducks in a row if you're going to be messing with those kinds of people. And quite frankly, my big focus is to make it so they don't want to talk to me. So why would I want to make them so they don't want to talk to me and then go and talk to them? You know what I mean?
Yeah, true, true. Like I said, I'm trying to figure out how to deal with issues of my own, and actually, this is something that's interesting. For under the Constitution for California, and I think it's for all the states, but there has to be under the Constitution two constables per county, and the only one for the county where I'm at is also the county sheriff. So, my opinion, that's conflict of interest. So I'm going to try to get myself basically certified as the constable on a volunteer basis for this area of the county.
Well, it's fine if you want to do that, but that's a person again. I think your most powerful argument is that it's not positive law, and the traffic. The transportation code by itself, just the definition, no transportation code is positive law. That it's all administrative, and so that's the argument. It's not positive law, and you don't have any authority. And that's where I'd be going with it. Even if I was a U.S. citizen, that's where I'd be going with it.
Right. I see exactly where you're coming from. See, the problem is that I need to be able to. How do I want to word this?
Another thing you can go after them for is barratry. Okay, the attorneys. Okay, they're engaging in barratry. They're testifying. There's a whole bunch of things they're doing that's improper. They're testifying. They're going in there and testifying, and they can't testify. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of things they're going. You have a right to face your accuser. Where's my accuser? I want to see the state of Pennsylvania here. I want to see him right here in front of me.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if the cop wrote you the ticket and the cop's not there in the court, then your accuser's not there.
Well, but the cop is not the state of Pennsylvania.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Okay.
The
Yeah.
ticket says the state of Pennsylvania.
Right.
So,
Yeah. See,
I mean, there's a whole bunch of ways that you can just blow holes in their case and make it so they don't want to proceed. But you got to do it in advance. You got to understand it's a military proceeding. They're trying to give you. It's only in a military courtroom that you're entitled to counsel. First of all, and so they're trying to. It's a military courtroom. It's martial law jurisdiction, and you need to point that out. Does that? Where's the contract? Where did I agree to this? This is a military courtroom. I mean, there's a whole bunch of reasons that they don't have a shred of authority.
Right. Yeah. I hear what you're saying. We have a question. In common law, is there an age of accountability as in contract?
I believe it's 21.
Okay. That's what I was
But
thinking.
most states have passed laws that make maybe 18 or something like that. So I would use whatever the state passes as a law. But you have to understand also that all the states are under martial law too. Um, there's actually two states. There's at least two states in every state. Okay, there's the state of Minnesota in all block capital letters. Okay, which is a municipal corporation that's really a subcorporation of the United States. Okay,
Right.
and then there's the state of Minnesota in upper lowercase, which is the corporation that's the government, the de jure government of Minnesota, and then there's Minnesota State. Okay, and that is the people of Minnesota.
Okay. Right.
So you have to understand who you're dealing with and deal with it appropriately. And that's another thing is they use municipal law to enforce their martial law.
Oh, it's frustrating. They make it
True.
so
So it
complicated.
says
They make it
what's
complicated.
that?
It's a bit frustrating.
It says here, so anyone under 21 cannot join in contract, meaning any state issuing an SSN to a person under 21 would be unlawful. That's true, but it's unlawful any way you want to look at it. The key is just don't use the thing, but also don't register your birth. Don't at common law. How's that done? That's recorded in the family Bible, and so there's no law that says you have to register your birth. Uh, uh, so then what you have to do, in my opinion, is if I was to have kids, I would try and talk my wife into to having the baby at home, and then we wouldn't register the birth. What I would do is I would make up a birth certificate with witnesses, and I'd record it in the county recorder's office, so that then it's got some sort of government document. You see what I'm saying?
Yep. Exactly. Okay. Um, that was the last one that you read out, right?
So, but that's
Go ahead.
what we have to do. Is there's all these contracts that mean nothing. These laws that really apply to nobody, and we're running down and getting involved in this stuff, and so the courts view that to be a contract.
Right. Yeah. That's what it comes down to. Is just it's all contract. Yeah.
So how do you purchase land and own it? That's another question. And so when I buy land, first of all, you have to understand that when you buy land and you give Federal Reserve notes for your land, Federal Reserve notes are not dollars, okay? It says dollars on it, but that means nothing. A Federal Reserve note is not dollars. I've got a quote from a Treasury, a former Undersecretary of the Treasury that says that the Federal Reserve notes are not dollars. A dollar is a certain weight of silver, is what it is, and so that's what a dollar is. And so when you buy land, if you give Federal Reserve notes, the Federal Reserve notes an IOU is all it is. And so if you give IOUs for land, you haven't paid for it, and that's why they have eminent domain. You buy land from the government, and then you pay for it with IOUs. You essentially give it back to them, and so what you have to do is you pay for the land with a silver coin, and you have to, because they can presume everything's under martial law. They can presume that you used Federal Reserve notes, so you have to put it on the face of the deed that you used silver coins. And then you'll have true ownership of the land. Now, another thing I do when I do it is I bring forward all the rights and privileges of the original land patent as well. But I think the real powerful thing is paying for it with silver, because there's a thing in Roman law. See, what they're doing is they're imposing Roman law on us, and Roman law is all voluntary. It all comes from the Vatican, and so when you buy the land, there's a thing in Roman law called a usufruct, usufruct, and that's when you have the right to use something, but you don't own it, and that's why they're charging you a yearly rent. It's a type of a trust, and that's essentially what you do when you use IOUs to pay for the land. You set up a trust, and so if you want to really pay for the land, then you can do that, and I have done that, and the taxing authorities quit communicating with me.
Yep. The next question would be, do you have to use U.S. Mint silver or gold coins, or can you use any silver or gold coin for legal tender?
You could use anything. Any gold or silver coins. I mean, I would. I always use U.S. Silver Eagles. I specify, but you could just say because I've seen court cases that actually talk about it. Okay, I've seen court cases that say that some guy converted silver into land, and that's essentially what you do in common law. A conversion is a common law thing. Okay, and so. When you convert silver to land, what you do is it's like a bill of exchange. You exchange something real for something real, and so it's not in the matrix anymore. And so that's what I would put. I'd call my deed. I'd call it. Matter of fact, the most recent ones I've done, I call them a bill of exchange / deed, and a grant deed. Actually, I call it a bill of exchange / grant deed, and then I say something like, upon receipt of $21 in my case, I always use Silver Eagles. Okay, so then I'll say, upon receipt of $21 in lawful money, and then in brackets 21 each Silver Eagle coins with a face value of $1, 1 troy ounce each of pure silver. You see what I'm saying? I'll specify all of that stuff on there. And
right, exactly.
I hereby grant and convey this land together with all the rights and privileges of this land patent to Joe Blow. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and legal tender technically would be whatever's agreed upon. It could be, 2 Krugerrands. It could be, 2 $20 Gaudens. It could be, Mexican silver dollars. I mean, whatever
yes.
the two agree upon as medium of exchange is whatever's a legal tender, as long as you spell it out.
Exactly. Well, I don't like to use the word legal tender because legal has to do with the contract, and so
right.
I would just use lawful money. Another thing is that what I would do is whatever I use, even if it is Krugerrands, I might say Krugerrands, but what I would say 1 troy ounce of pure gold. You see what I'm saying? And,
yeah, exactly.
And
just spell it out.
each,
yep.
and so you're exchanging something for something real, and you're specifying that it's gold and silver.
Yep, exactly. Yep, I understand perfectly on that. I mean, I've been preaching the whole gold and silver being lawful money, or whatever you want to call it, for years and years and years now. And, it's finally starting to come back around, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think you ought to buy as much as you can because I think it's going to go through the roof here very quick.
Yeah, I think so, too. See, the problem I always had a little bit of silver here and there. I could never find hardly anybody that wanted to, deal with it. Everybody was like, oh, yeah, just give me $20, Well, here, I got this silver, no, give me a $20 bill. Okay, here, fine.
Yeah, that's true. And so, I mean, if they want to take the IOUs, that's fine. I don't care. I'll get rid of them. But so usually what I do is there's people that'll do silver. In Texas, there's quite a network of people because the Republic of Texas is there, and the Republic of Texas is coining medallions that are gold and silver. and they've got a bunch of, they go around to stores and say, "Will you accept these as payment for your services?" And they get stores to agree to accept them as payment.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree.
And in some states, like Utah, they made it a law that you have to accept
Yeah,
a gold or silver coin.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yep.
So it's coming around, but again, if you don't ask them, they won't answer it, will they? I mean, offer them, will you take gold or silver coin? Myself, I just as soon give them the IOUs. The only time I'm really concerned about it is with land in particular, because you can't buy land with IOUs and expect to own the land.
Right.
As far as anything else is concerned, it's just considered personal property.
Well, and same thing. If it goes for land, it goes for a vehicle too. If you use IOUs to buy a vehicle, then you don't actually own it because you didn't actually pay anything for it. So I mean, the same thing would apply, correct?
Yes, and you could. I've heard of like in Canada, I heard of a case where this guy went and exchanged labor for a vehicle. And when he went to register it, the procedure was completely different. Yeah, that's one thing he said. He didn't say how it was different in particular, but he did say that everything was different. When he exchanged land, he wrote a bill of exchange for his land, or I should say for a vehicle, exchanged labor for this vehicle. Matter of fact, what happened was the vehicle was the bank was trying to steal it because it was the guy that owned it was behind on the payments, and so the bank was trying to steal it. So the guy was trying to figure out a way of getting around that. So what he did was they did a bill of exchange for this land. The vehicle was say it was worth $15,000. There was still $4,000 owed on it, right? And so the bill of exchange was for the $10,000 in equity. So the guy did $10,000 worth of labor for this vehicle, and so then the guy went down to the bank. He said to the bank, he says, "I have this bill of exchange for this vehicle. The labor's done. I need to know what your interest is in this vehicle." And so he expected the bank to say, "Well, you owe us $4,000," and he was prepared to give him $4,000, right? And so. But what he did was he went down there and said, "What's your interest in this vehicle?" And the bank came back and said, "Can you come back in a half an hour?" And he said, "Sure." And so he went down the street and had a coffee, and he came back in half an hour, and the bank signed the vehicle over to him.
Nice. And so the thing is, I mean, the majority of the people have been so brainwashed to just accept what they're told. Oh, he knows what he's talking about, so I have to do this. No, go do your research. Go find out what the actual law states. I mean, that's probably the biggest point that we're trying to make here tonight.
Well, and that's the thing is, and this is one thing that I tell people all the time, is there is no such thing as an incompetent sovereign, okay? In other words, that's what they're doing, okay? If that lawyer is representing you, that bureaucrat, okay, when you go and ask that bureaucrat for anything, okay, you're saying, "I'm incompetent. I need you to make a decision for me." Okay? That's essentially what you're saying. You're asking that bureaucrat to represent you. That's exactly what you're doing. And so you have to read it and study it for yourself and know the law and know what you have to do. And if someone comes up to you and says, "Well, you're supposed to be doing this," that should make your blood boil. I mean, because what they're doing is they're representing you. They're making legal determinations for you. They're telling you that you're incompetent, and that makes my blood boil. I got to tell you, and so most people don't have a clue about all the stuff that's going on, and they're slaves just by their actions.
Yep. And like they say, ignorance of the law is no excuse. I mean, it's on you to figure it out because they're not going to tell you.
That's right. It says here, What about the vehicle transaction record? I've been told that if you buy your car with IOUs, you can ask for your vehicle transaction record, and it will give you 100% interest in your vehicle. That's all in commerce. I don't deal in commerce. If you want to deal in commerce, then buyer beware. Yeah, you know, and probably the biggest reason I don't go into commerce is because they're thieves. Okay? Now, you might run into one thief that's more honest than the other thief, but they're still thieves. And if you run into one thief that maybe you might he might treat you honestly, then yeah, good. You better take your money and run, because the next thief doesn't necessarily have to do that. And that's really the bottom line is that, in my opinion, it's all satanic. It's all Luciferian. They're all just a bunch of thieves, and I just want nothing to do with them. And why on earth would you expect a thief to be anything but a thief?
Right. I mean, why would you voluntarily contract with criminals? I mean, we know that the government's not honest. We know that the cops generally, granted, there are good ones that do their job and stop murderers and rapists and things like that, but generally most of them don't have a sufficient education in the law to probably even hold a conversation with you, or for me that matter. And it's frustrating, and like you said, just you have to be very careful, because if you start going into commerce, then they're all over you. And why would you contract with people you know are thieves and criminals? I mean, why would you even consider it?
You got that right. Yeah, that's fact. Yeah. And that's why I stay away from it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where I'm at. I mean, I know a couple of the cops that are the local in town here, and the couple times that I've had to deal with them, I've not had problems. But there's a new one in town, and that's the guy who stole my van the last time for 30 days, and everything else that's been going on. But you start talking to them about Constitution this or jurisdiction that, and they just get this glazed look at you, and they're like, "Look, dude, I'm going to write you the ticket, and you're going to sign it, and I'm going to drive off. If you have a problem with that, I'm going to arrest you and haul you off to jail." I mean...
Well, and that's why you have to defeat their presumption. See, in martial law, everything works on presumption. And even at common law, there's a principle at common law that says that, let me find that, because it's very important. Most people don't know this. There's a principle at common law that says that if you have something to plead and you don't do it at the proper time, you forever lose your opportunity. And that's very important. And that's in an old court case, Chisholm versus Georgia. Oh, have you seen that letter from that Arizona Senator, Wayne Stump?
Yes, I read through that. That's amazing. Great letter.
Yeah, I've got a certified copy of that.
Nice. Yeah, I was going to ask you, for the Constitution, how would I go about getting a hard copy to carry around? I just have to get it printed out and then get it notarized?
Well, if you want, I wouldn't, quite frankly, I wouldn't bother with that, but I mean, it's up to you, but, I wouldn't trust the ones that you get online. I think that you want to get a certified copy for the one that's in Congress. That'd probably be the best one. Or actually, I have a certified copy of an 1819 Constitution. If you're interested, it's got a 13th Amendment in it.
Yeah, see, I have the PDF copy of that, but I want a hard copy. I want to have one that's got the sign, the seal, and the notice, or the notary and everything on it.
Yeah, the only way that you could do that would be to get a certified copy, take it to the county recorder's office, and record it, and then get a certified copy of the recording, and then you'd have something that would be. But I mean, that's a lot of trouble to go to for something that, in my opinion, would be of limited value. Here's this court case. It's Penhallow versus Doan's Administrators, 3 U.S. 54, 1795. That's U.S. Supreme Court, and it says, quote, "It is a rule at common law, the reason applies in equity and other civil law cases, that if a party can plead a fact material to his defense and omits to do it at the proper time, he can never avail himself of it afterwards," unquote. So you have to defeat their presumptions, and you have to do it up front. And that's why, once they stop you, especially once you start giving them your government-issued ID and stuff like that, it's too late. That's why when I serve them with my registered letter, and I do it long before they ever see me on the radar, that's why they put me down as sovereign in their system, because they're telling all of their hired thugs running around out there, leave this guy alone or you're going to be in jail.
Yeah, see, that's the problem, though. I mean, I've been running around trying to figure out what's going on with driving without a license and everything, and now I'm finally getting some of that straightened out. But, everything is everything is complicated, and it's hard to find the correct information when you need it. You know what I'm saying?
I have a standard notice that I send out to all of them, and as I adjust it, like in different states, I might put in some different state citations. Like, for example, I'm currently in Delaware, and so I looked up some Delaware statutory citations to put in there to show them that none of the rules apply to me. And if I was in Texas, I'd use some different ones. But so the point is, though, is that that's the only difference, okay? That's the absolute only difference between one and another. And I use the same court cases. I use all the same stuff. And all I do is I just change the name and I personalize it so that there's a header and a footer, and the header and the footer's got this guy's name on it. Every paragraph says, "You, Joe Smith, Attorney General for Delaware," you see what I'm saying? Are noticed that
right.
this, and you, and every paragraph says that. And so, anyways, the point is that you don't need to. All you got to do is tell them you're the king, okay? And you don't have any more authority over me than Walmart Rent-A-Cop, and it covers everything. And that's why I like doing what I do, because I don't need to learn all their codes, rules, and regulations. All I need to learn is a few sections in their definitions section to see that it doesn't apply to me, and then I tell them that, and a whole bunch of other stuff, and now they don't want to talk to me, and I kind of like that.
Yeah, that's where I'm trying to get to. Yep.
But you have to do it in advance.
Right. Well, see, that's what I'm looking at. Is, I mean, I already have a warrant out, so now I'm trying to figure out what am I going to do when I have to go and deal with them, because I'm going to have to go and show up and deal with them. So it's either going to be dealing with them through paperwork or going and showing up in court. So I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with it. But anyway.
Well, I'll tell you what I did.
Uh-huh.
They issued a warrant for my straw man. What happened is, this was in Arizona, and I was going through a foreclosure, and so I arrested the auctioneer, and so they issued a warrant for disturbing the peace. And so what happened is, the reason I know they issued a warrant is because I called up the court, and the court said they issued a warrant. And so I was at work one day. They didn't know how to find me, first of all, because I never, ever, ever give out where I live, okay? I always use a private mailbox, okay? First of all, that's number one rule that everybody should always do, is use a private mailbox, okay? And so they didn't know where to find me, but they did know where I work, okay? And so one day, it was on Memorial Day weekend, there was this guy that showed up on work, and I had noticed, I had sent my notices out to the chiefs of police and the county sheriff and the state police, okay? And so the interesting thing is that none of those guys would have anything to do with it, okay? They had to send a bounty hunter. And so anyways, my coworkers told me that there was a big guy looking for me at work one day when I came back from work. It was Memorial Day weekend on Friday, and so what happened is I left work early that day, and I was driving out of the parking lot, and this bounty hunter was driving in, and he had his van all caged in inside. So I took a week's vacation. I was already preparing a lawsuit. I filed a lawsuit, and by the way, when I was doing my administrating, I administrated the chief judge of the Supreme Court, and I told her that she had some criminals operating on the land of Florence, which this was all from the town of Florence was the name of the town that was doing this, and anyways. And so there was a judge involved, and so I sent a registered letter to the chief judge and to the attorney general and the county sheriff, and I invited them all to the party, and I told them you got some criminals operating here, and so anyways, when I filed the lawsuit, I named them all in the lawsuit, and so then before I went to, as soon as I filed the lawsuit, Monday was off because it's Memorial Day weekend. That was a holiday, so Tuesday was the first day of work. I filed my lawsuit. I got the case number, and then I sent a registered letter to the chief judge of the Supreme Court, and I ordered her to quash the warrant for the arrest of the straw man vessel. And I said, quote, because we all know that the corporate commercial agents, the police in brackets, are too stupid to tell the difference between a sovereign living soul and a straw man vessel, unquote. And then I said, furthermore, I filed this lawsuit, and this is the case number, and you're named in it. And if you fail to quash the warrant for the arrest of the straw man vessel, there'll be further proof of your dereliction of duty to regulate your subordinates. And she quashed the warrant. And the reason I know she did is because the attorney general responded in that lawsuit for the chief judge, and the attorney general said it was perfectly appropriate that I petition the chief judge to get the warrant quashed. So the bottom line is actually she didn't quash it. And what I think she did is she issued a restraining order telling them to leave the living soul alone and not to be messing with me and only go after the straw man, because that warrant is still out there. And the reason I know it's still out there is because I got in a car accident in Arizona in 2008, and no, it's 2009, and that was like about 4 years after, 4 years after all of this. Okay. Anyways, I got in a car accident. Some lady made an illegal left turn and broadsided me, and so the cops came. It was the county sheriff. It was Pinal County Sheriff. The town of Florence is the county seat for Pinal County, and they pulled up the warrant in their computer, and they said on the computer, I heard them talking on the radio, and they were saying, we don't want to extradite, okay? In other words, that's telling me they don't want to have anything to do with me. They don't know what to do with this warrant, but they don't want to have anything to do with me. So anyways, they were telling the Pinal County Sheriff, we don't want to extradite. So the bottom line is the Pinal County Sheriff never arrested me. They made all sorts of threats because all I had to do was pay $350 and the thing would go away. But so they made all sorts of threats. They never arrested me, and I went on my way.
Yeah, I lived out in that area for a while. I lived in Salmonwell, Mammoth area, and I actually got arrested on a warrant and had to sit 2 weeks in the Florence jail there. That was interesting. But yeah, I know that area a little bit. That was back in the 90s.
That's big business.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that's why they try to come and get you on like a Friday night, because you have to sit till Monday. That's $70,000 for the state.
Well, that's true, but you can demand to see a judge now. I mean, most people don't know this, but get his butt out of bed. I want to see a judge now.
Yeah,
I don't care if it's 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, technically, you have to be taken before. My understanding was a magistrate, but depending on the state, it would be a judge. And if they don't, and they take you to jail and book you first, then it can be considered kidnapping.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I called up the district court and I explained that I'm a living soul and I don't believe they have jurisdiction and this, that, and the other thing. And she just kind of said, okay, we'll note that for the record. And then I called the marshal's office and I said, look, you guys don't understand the difference between a straw man and a living human being. You know, the corporation with the all caps name versus a living human being. And if you come and try to serve that warrant, I'm going to consider it unlawful aggravated abduction. And he hung up on me.
Well, you know, and that's one of the things also I put in there, and I think that's one of the reasons they put me down as sovereign, because I've got some court cases that say that you have the right to resist an unlawful arrest with lethal force if necessary, and if they don't witness you commit a felony and they don't have a valid warrant, then it's an unlawful arrest. And so then, and that's another thing I put in there is that if one of your hired thugs attempts to unlawfully arrest me, or actually I accuse him of murder. I accuse him of conspiracy to commit murder because you're going to send your hired thugs out unlawfully arrest me, and I'm going to exercise my right to resist that unlawful arrest with lethal force if necessary, and your hired thug's going to have an excuse to murder me.
Yep.
And that was actually why the FBI and the Texas State Police came to see me.
Well, hey, I have a question for you. How about warrants and the authority to issue and serve warrants? What's your research on that?
Well, I can tell you that most jurisdictions are doing a capias, and that's not a warrant. And so what you have to do is, again, if you take away their right to presume, then they're not going to mess with you. In Texas is a good example. It says that peace officers have the right to arrest persons. Well, that's one thing I tell them. I'm not a person,
right.
And so they don't have the right to arrest me. And so I mean, you just go down the list. I mean, there's probably 50 different reasons why they don't have any authority, and but you got to tell them that.
Right, unless I have trespassed, have done damage to property, or harmed another individual, or you see me committing a felony, you can't talk to me. You have no reason to.
They have to witness you commit a felony, or B, there has to be a lawful warrant. That's the only two scenarios. They have to witness you commit a felony, and it's not United States Code felony, it's a state felony. United States Code is they don't have any authority. United States Code Article 11, an amendment, says that United States federal courts do not have jurisdiction over we the people, and if the federal courts don't have jurisdiction, then neither do the codes have any authority. And so, right. Therefore, the federal, it can't be a federal felony. It's got to be a state felony.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, and that falls under the 11th Amendment too, correctly?
Well, technically, you could actually prove that all state courts are federal courts too, because they all have a U.S. flag in them. So, yes, you're right.
Right.
But that's something that you'd have to argue, and in fact, that would be something I might consider putting into my documents in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's all out there if you just look. I mean, honestly, I mean, I'm sitting here. I mean, I got a computer, but it's not the best, But I do a fair amount of research, and I'm getting there. But if you don't have access to a pretty decent library, or even like a Bouvier's Law Dictionary, I'm trying to get myself an actual physical copy. I have a PDF, but oh my God, it takes days to search for something in there.
Yep. Here's a question that says, Glenn, what do you think will happen with the current financial collapse and the police state government being set up? Are they preparing for a total breakdown of agencies, infrastructure, state government agencies? And if they are, what can we do when the system breaks down? Well, first of all, and this is very important, the police are not the enemy, okay? And we do have to come to their aid when they need it. And in fact, there's some court cases that talk about this. This is a citation taken from Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1856 edition. Quote, "A refusal on the part of an individual lawfully called upon to assist the officer in putting down a riot is indictable," unquote. And that's taken from 1 Carn Marsh 314. That's an English court case. That's very old. That's common law. So I guess what my point is that that doesn't give, no matter what happens, if we let the police know that we're there to help them, then there's going to be no reason for them to arrest us. We let them know that who we are, that we're the king and we're not some slave. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it comes down to, I mean, if they're acting lawfully, yeah, I'll help. But if they're not acting lawfully, then I'm not obliged to help them, right?
Well, absolutely, that's right. Yeah, but so again, I mean, most of these police officers, we need to educate them, and that's part of what we should be doing. And and that's why another reason I do what I do, because it serves to educate my public servants.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there's a ex-police officer in town. He's dealing with an issue, and I was talking to him, and I was just BSing about, cops took my vehicle and whatnot, and I said, you don't have to have a driver's license. You don't have to have the license plate and this, that, and the other thing as long as you're not in commerce. And he looks at me and he says, yeah, I agree, totally, 100%. And I looked at him and I go, really? He's like, yeah, I stopped this sovereign. He explained it to me very well, and he kind of was joking with me, and he says, after he explained it, I told him, okay, and he was free to go, and the guy looked at me really surprised, like he wasn't expecting to get let go, and then, he drove off, and I went and did the research, and it was right, so there you go. But I asked him, I said, so will you write an affidavit to that effect for me? And he started laughing.
Well, they all have a job to do, and so if people want to be a slave, it's a free country. You can be a slave, and they still have to raise money for the bankrupt corporations and all the rest of it. I cannot assert your rights. I cannot assert the guy next door's rights. He has to be the one to do it. If he doesn't want to do it, then that's his choice.
Right, exactly.
There's nothing, there was nobody holding.
Sorry, you have to do it yourself. You can't, tag along on someone's coattails.
That's right, and there's no one forcing him to go down and get a driver's license. There was nobody forcing him to go down and get a social security number. There was no one forcing him to do any of that stuff. And so now he's gone and done all that stuff, he has to undo it. And if he doesn't undo it, then he's a slave.
Right. Yeah. I get what you're saying there for sure. Well, we got about half hour, a little bit more left. Boy, we hit a bunch of stuff tonight so far. I'm trying to think of where to go next with some of this.
Well, you want to know about martial law?
Yeah, let's talk more about that. Sounds good.
Well, I've got a bunch of court cases.
Yep, sounds good.
This is, are you there?
Yeah, we're getting a little feedback from Turtle, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of like broken up a little bit.
Give it a second, guys, see if it clears. If not, we can go to a song and I'll pull you guys back in.
Okay, can I start?
If it sounds okay for you, I don't hear anything on this end, so I'll have to leave it to you guys. If you need me to put on a song and reboot you, I will.
Yeah, hold on a second. Hello, testing 1 2, testing 1 2. Okay, looks like the echo's gone on this side. Go ahead and try, Glenn.
Okay, I've got Revised Code of Washington, 1.16.090 says, quote, legislative declaration for Civil Liberties Day of Remembrance. The legislature recognizes that on February 19, 1942, the President of the United States issued Executive Order 9066, which authorized military rule over civil law and lives, unquote. So that's the first one. There's three kinds of martial law. We already talked about that. This is Juilliard versus Greenman, U.S. Supreme Court. That's found in 110 versus 110 U.S. 421, 1884. Quote, the action of Congress in the passage of the first Legal Tender Act was placed distinctly upon the existing imperative need of government, and the Legal Tender Clause was urged and adopted as a war measure, unquote. Well, a war measure, that's martial law. That's what martial law is all about. And it's actually military script. Legal tender is military script. There's a court case, Diet versus Turner, that talks about that. Here's another one. Quote, the forced loans of 1862 and 1863 in the form of legal tender notes were vital forces in the struggle for national supremacy. They formed a part of the public debt of the United States, unquote. That's the same case, Juilliard versus Greenman, 110 U.S. 421. They're a forced loan. That's martial law. And they're basically forcing you to loan the government money. They're bills of credit. That's a violation of the Constitution. The Constitution says they're not supposed to circulate bills of credit. Here's Diet versus Turner. Quote, Congress, claiming its martial law power to declare war, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions, imposed martial law in the United States and never discontinued it. The result was an extension of military and municipal jurisdiction of Congress, but where's the evidence of this? Look at the 13th Amendment, the Civil Rights Acts, the legal tender laws, the 14th Amendment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's Diet versus Turner, 439, P2D 266, and there's actually a book that's written that's associated with that case called The Non-Ratification of the 14th Amendment by this Judge H. Ellett of the Utah Supreme Court, and he was the judge in that case. And here's another cite from that same case. It says the 14th Amendment is an extension of the national military powers presently used in the municipal character and enforced by municipal laws stretch far beyond their original limitations and enforced by Article I tribunals, unquote.
Yep, there you go.
Yep. Some more stuff. This is U.S. Senate Report, number 93-549, dated November 19, 1973. Quote, since March 9, 1933, the United States has been in a state of declared national emergency. Under the powers delegated by these statutes, the President may seize property, organize and control the means of production, seize commodities, assign military forces abroad, institute martial law, seize and control all transportation and communication, regulate the operation of private enterprise, restrict travel, and in a plethora of particular ways control the lives of all American citizens. A majority of the people of the United States have lived all their lives under emergency rule. For 40 years, freedoms and governmental procedures guaranteed by the Constitution have in varying degrees been abridged by laws brought into force by states of national emergency. Well, remember, and we'll go back to that, the three kinds of martial law. There's full martial law, where the troops are put on the street and used only in wartime and used in a foreign country or when actually invaded by a foreign power, put down armed rebellion. There's martial law proper. We talked about that. That's when a captain tells a private what to do. And then there's martial law rule. That's the law of necessity and emergency, okay? And so what that site was saying is that we've been under martial law rule for at least 40 years, since 1933. And actually, Diet versus Turner says that it's been going on since the Civil War.
Yep, I would agree. Yep, that pretty much says it. You, I think, had mentioned a law from 1875 about the Congress not being able to regulate actions of the people. Do you have that one handy?
I don't know about 1875, but there's actually quite a few court cases to talk about that. I'd have to go into the citizenship presentation.
Yeah. Well, it was dealing with after the Civil War with the Reconstruction, and they were trying to mandate the allowing blacks and whoever to enter any building, restaurants and bars and different things. And it was basically saying that the Congress has no right to regulate the free actions of the people.
That's possible. I don't remember that particular part, but that's. I mean, I do talk about that all the time. When was I talking about this? Earlier today?
Oh no, that would have been a couple of weeks ago, maybe.
Oh well, I slept a couple times since then. Um,
Right, right. Yeah,
but
it popped into my head, and I wanted to mention it. So there you go.
but we could cover some of that. I mean, that's in the citizenship presentation. Um, there's lots of case law that talks about that.
Well, whatever you think is most important tonight, we can always have you back again and do a thing on citizenship and some other issues too.
Well, I mean, we were going through martial law, so we can continue going through that. I guess. But there's lots of court cases to say that the only power that is held by the government is power that we the people delegated.
Right. Oh, I know. I wanted to ask you. You mentioned the 13th Amendment. Are you referring to the original 13th Amendment or to the later 13th Amendment?
Well, I believe I was talking about the 1819 Constitution, so that would have been the original 13th Amendment.
Can you just go into that a little bit for people? Explain it, how it applies.
Well, sure. I got a copy of it here. It's the original 13th Amendment. This is taken from a certified copy of an 1819 Constitution. Oh, where is it? I got it here somewhere.
Right on. I had heard about that years ago, and I had seen a write up in a magazine and different things here and there, but I'd never actually gotten my hands on a physical printed out, facsimile or copy of that amendment. So I'm very glad to have gotten that PDF from you. That was awesome.
Oh, I sent it to you?
Yes, yes. That and the letter from the senator about the driving.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember where I got that. I know I got it here somewhere. I'm just having trouble finding it. But basically, the significance is that it's a certified copy. What happened in my first Supreme Court case is I basically brought up one of the things I said was that the War of 1812 was orchestrated by the Crown because they wanted to facilitate the disappearance of this true Article 13 Amendment. And one of the major engagements of the War of 1812 was when they went to the Capitol at the time, and they burned the National Archives. And that's where the records of the ratification of the true Article 13 Amendment would have been kept. And so that's I brought up, here it is. I knew I had it. Anyways, I brought up that in my Supreme Court case, the first one that I went to them, and the U.S. Department of So-Called Justice, which is what I called them in the case, waived their right to respond. Another thing I said was that the Crown wanted their foreign agents, bar members, to infiltrate our country and seize control it and operate it like an international criminal racketeering enterprise to this day. And they waived their right to respond. Now, I don't know how much you know about the courts, but if they don't respond, if you make an allegation and they don't respond, then it's admitted as the truth. And so that's essentially what they did. And what they did is they took away the controversy, and so therefore there was nothing for the Supreme Court to rule on. And so they dismissed the case. But it was all the same arguments. I told them that they didn't have any right to turn my case away, and the rules it says that they can turn away any case they want. I told them in my petition that they didn't have any. Actually, I did a motion to proceed without paying the fees. And so I told them that you don't have any right to turn this case away, and you don't have any right to charge me any fees because I'm one of the people. And I don't have any income. Income is corporate profits. I'm not a corporation. I just went down the list. Anyways, they accepted the case and they docketed it, and then the U.S. Department of so-called Justice waived their right to respond. And so it's all the same arguments that I would have used in the actual case. It was all the same arguments that I used to get them to accept it. So I essentially won the case, but it was a hollow victory because they dismissed it, and because the Department of so-called Justice waived their right to respond. Anyways, the Article 13 of the amendment says, it's right here, it says, if any citizen of the United States shall accept, claim, receive, or retain any title of nobility or honor, or shall, without the consent of Congress, accept and retain any present, pension, office, or emolument of any kind, whatever, from any emperor, king, prince, or foreign power, such person shall cease to be a citizen of the United States and shall be incapable of holding any office of trust or profit under them or either of them. Now, there's some interesting things about this. First of all, says if any citizen of the United States shall accept, claim, receive, or retain any title of nobility or honor. Okay, so that's the first clause. And a title of nobility, well, all bar members have a title of nobility. You look it up in any law dictionary, it's called Esquire. That's a title of nobility, okay? And honor, okay, from a foreign power, say, or shall, without the consent of Congress, accept or retain any present pension, office, or emolument of any kind, whatever, from any emperor, king, prince, or foreign power, okay? So the second clause, or shall, without the consent of Congress, accept or retain any present pension, office, or emolument of any kind, and then the third clause is from any emperor, king, prince, or foreign power. Okay, so the bar, is if you look up Inns of Court in any law dictionary, a good one, it'll say the Inns of Court is a private collegiate institute in the city of London. Okay, so it is a foreign power. Inns of Court, and it says that the Inns of Court has the exclusive right to appoint men to the bar, okay? So you cannot be a bar member unless the Inns of Court appoints you. And right. The significance of... What's that?
I was just agreeing, yes.
So anyways, the significance of that, and where the Vatican comes in, is that in 1066, William the Conqueror conquered England. Well, he actually didn't conquer all of England because he didn't conquer the city of London. And the city of London is a 1 or 2 mile square area in downtown London that has a wall around it. And I think there's about 12 gates. I'm not sure how many gates, but there's gates. And one of them is called Temple Bar. And if you ever watch the convening of the Imperial Parliament, you'll see the Queen of England go to this gate called Temple Bar, and it will be closed. It's a big oak door in this wall into downtown London. Downtown London is where the Imperial Parliament buildings sit. Anyways, so there's this there's this door. What's that?
Yeah, we're a little bit of feedback there again.
So anyways, there's this door. The Queen of England goes there and she beats on the door, and there's this 1 square foot little door in the big door, and the Lord Mayor of London is on the other side, and he opens up this little door and says to the Queen of England, "What do you want?" And she has to get his permission to enter into that foreign territory, and she walks 2 steps behind him during the whole trip with her head bowed. And that's what goes on when the convening of the Imperial Parliament. Now, if you read the Magna Carta talks about how they were charging fees, they were charging customs, they were searching people and charging them customs to go into the city of London. So the Magna Carta says you can't do that anymore, and so they don't do it anymore. But so the point is that the Magna Carta was brought about because King John was imposing martial law on the people, and the War of Independence. The War of Independence is the same thing. The War of Independence was brought about because King George was imposing martial law on America. and I've got some actually some citations from from the causes and necessities for taking up arms, and I'll read those here in a second as soon as I pull them up. Anyways, so the War of Independence was fought over martial law being imposed in this country, and now we have martial law here again. And when are we going to learn? So I'll read you this causes and necessities.
Yeah, that's about it. I mean, when are we going to learn?
That's right.
When Thomas Jefferson and all those guys created the Constitution, and was it Franklin or Jefferson that was asked, what have you wrought? I think it was Franklin, Benjamin Franklin.
That was
he said,
Franklin,
a republic, you can keep it.
That's right. That's right.
We haven't been a republic for many, many, many years.
This is taken from the causes and necessities for taking up arms, 1775. And it says, statutes have been passed extending the courts of admiralty and vice-admiralty far beyond their ancient limits for depriving us of the customs and inestimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law, and instead thereof to publish and order the use and exercise of the law martial, unquote. So
there you go.
the War of Independence was over martial law being imposed. And that's exactly what's going on again today.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I mean, yeah.
And there's more court cases. Here's more of this non-ratification of the 14th Amendment. It says here, quote, as we have said, the federal personal income tax is collected under a military venue within a martial law jurisdiction. Federal Reserve notes are military script, circulated within a military venue. The problem is the people don't understand how the entire United States is covered by a military venue. Under the Social Security Act, there was brought into existence 10 federal regional areas. These 10 federal regional areas are the same as a military base. It is not unconstitutional to circulate military script on a military base, as the base is considered to be a military venue. Military script cannot circulate in the civil jurisdiction of the several states. To get around this constitutional bar, the Congress, via the Social Security Act, created 10 military venues called federal regional areas. The problem the Congress realized was, while Congress could restructure the government agencies into these federal regional areas, the people could not be identified to be within this military venue, but by their own consent. I can't tell you that how many times, but by their own consent. The solution was to create another military venue which would trick the people to voluntarily accept recognition that they are within a military venue. Congress solved this problem by creating a zip code.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. The zip code and the two-letter designator for the states all create, well, one is the military jurisdiction, the other one is the federal jurisdiction, correct?
I don't know. I don't use either one because I want nothing to do with them. And right. And I put down that zip code exempt is my address, and right. And it gets here no problem.
Yep. And yeah, that's it. It's consent and telling them what you're doing. As long as you give them some notice, and like you write on there, zip code exempt. There's your notice right there. They'll figure it out.
The last time the IRS, after I sued the IRS and took them to the Supreme Court, they actually sent me a request to file, and I made a copy of it, and then I put it back in the envelope, and I wrote on the outside of the envelope, no such person at this address, and I sent it back to them. I made a copy of all that, and then I attached it all to a criminal complaint, and I sent it to the U.S. Attorney General, and I haven't heard from him since.
Right. Yeah, so here's another little thing interesting that's going on with my case. I just figured I'd mention this. They had originally sent me the notice under my capital letter name, the corporation. So I called and wrote a letter to them and said, if you wish to further address me, you will address me as, first name, middle name of the family, and that's how they issued the warrant. and they didn't have the United States in capital letters as the corporation. They actually had it in the, the U and the S was capitalized, but the rest are lower. So interesting that they tried to jump jurisdictions there, it seems to me.
Well, that would what I'd be looking for there is to see if it's a valid warrant. In other words, if everything's done on it that has to be done. I would be wondering about that.
Well, it does not have a wet ink signature. I know that. It has a stamp.
Well, that's not a valid warrant. Stamp means nothing.
Well, I'm saying that's the one that was mailed to me. I don't know about the one that they're actually going to serve me with. But yeah, again, Sorry, go ahead.
What I would do is attach that to a criminal complaint for perjury, treason, sedition, and send it to the Attorney General.
See, I like the way you think. See, I never would have really thought about doing it that way.
Well, that's who would deal with that, isn't it? If there's a judge that's perjuring his oath of office, the Attorney General will have to deal with it.
Right. Well, and that's another thing. When the police officer stole my van, at one point I asked him. I said, when he came back to have me sign the ticket, I said, I need to ask you a question. He says, okay, go ahead. He said, are you acting under your oath of office and your oath to the Constitution? And he didn't answer me, and I said, are you acting under your oath to the Constitution and your oath of office, or are you acting under your authority of your badge and letter of marque? And his response was, I'm doing my job.
he's obviously not acting under his oath of office. But again, that's why you need to notice his boss, okay? Because he shouldn't have to deal with it. I mean, they don't want to tell those guys too much because they don't want them doing too much thinking, and so the boss is really the guy. I never realized this until I was thinking about it one day, but COP, that stands for Chief of Police. Well, that also stands for cop, and so really the guy that's responsible is the Chief of Police, and so he's the guy that we need to go after. And I basically set them all up, and they put me down as sovereign in their system because they're basically telling their subordinates, leave this guy alone.
Well, yeah, I called up the county administration, and I actually got the chick to admit that the sheriff's office is an agent of the corporation, of the municipal, county corporation, and so that the sheriff's department is a paid agent of the state, and that how can he operate as the sheriff and also operate as the constable, because that's a clear conflict of interest. And I thought it was real interesting that she actually admitted that the police department was an agent of the corporation.
Yeah, well, they in that case, I think they wear two hats, and so what you have to do is bring out his de jure hat, and the way you do that is you serve him with notice about the fact that you're not one of his slaves, and that you're the king, and that the only authority he has is authority that you delegated, and that if he ever needs you to come to his aid, that you'll do it to your last dying breath, and that kind of thing. You see what I'm saying? And that's the way I would approach that, because the sheriff, I mean, those kinds of people we need as our ally. And we just need to educate him, and if he doesn't want to be educated, then he needs to be removed. Either way, you got to serve him with that. If he violates your rights, you file a criminal complaint, and then someone else comes along.
Yeah, see, that's why I'm looking at trying to get recognized as the constable for the county, because that way I could talk to him as a fellow officer under the Constitution and level the playing field slightly. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah, I think
with him, as the sheriff, and trying to get him to recognize me as the constable and whatever, I can simply walk in and be like, all right, here, this is the deal. This is who I am. Let me talk to this guy under this hat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a mistake in my opinion, because a constable's a person, and again, it comes down to whether the guy's honest or not, and all the rest of it, and so, I think, in my opinion, I think that's a mistake.
Well, and
I'm the king.
That's the whole thing is, I mean, can I trust him to be honest about it? You know what I mean?
Well, and so I'm the king, and if either he's going to be honest or I'm going to get his butt in jail. Okay, it's one or the other.
That would be the thing, is I can be the king, but I can also be acting as the constitutional constable for the county. Could I not?
Well, whatever. Go for it. Go for it.
I mean, I'm asking. I'm not sure on this. I'm still trying to work my way through how I'm going to deal with the situation. So.
Yeah, I already told you what I thought.
Okay, fair enough. Right on. Well, we got a few minutes left. Do you want to give out a website and make any last couple of comments here, and then I think we're going to wrap up.
I've got a couple groups that are private groups. I've uploaded a bunch of documents. If anybody is interested in learning about how to do this, I have all my latest documents I send to the groups. When I recently sent some groups to the FBI and the U.S. Marshals here in the Delaware area, and so all those latest documents are available on those groups. And so if you're interested in finding out more and about how to do it, I'm not too much into babysitting, and so I expect people to do their own homework. And but I make the information available. But I can't assert your rights for you, and so I don't like repeating myself, and so I wind up people are constantly asking me about this and about that, and I tell them I've uploaded about 100 YouTube videos. You need to watch my videos. You need to read the material I have on the website, and then if you still need help after that, then I'll talk to you. But otherwise, I expect people to do some foundational work first before I'm going to lift my finger. Because I don't like repeating myself. I'm not a babysitter. I expect everybody to be acting like mature adults. We got ourselves into this situation. We need to get ourselves out. Now, are you the guy that wanted me to call you up or something like that? Sent me an email, said to call you?
I may have like a couple of weeks ago or something.
Yeah, I probably didn't realize who it was. You should tell me next time, and then I'll know, because I don't do phone calls normally. People call me, people send me emails and want me to call them all the time, and I'm not interested in talking to people. If they want some help, they need to go and do the homework. There's no such thing as anything that's urgent. If it's urgent, it's too late,
right,
and they need to deal with it in commerce. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, yeah.
And so,
can you give out your YouTube channel?
Yeah, my Sovereign Living is my profile on YouTube. You can go there and find my videos. I've also got a website. It's www.sovereigntyinternational.info, and you can go there and see a bunch of this stuff. What else? I've got a Facebook group, but that's there's a bunch of people. There's about 7,000 people on that, but there's all sorts of stuff that's going on there.
Right. What was your YouTube again? Sovereign Living.
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to double check because I got a little feedback on that. Let me see here. We got about 4 minutes left. Is there anything else that you want to throw out there?
Yeah, well, basically, my email, if you want to contact me by email, but I'm not, I'll talk a little bit, but I'm not too interested in saying a lot, other than if I see that one thing I don't do is I don't go into commerce. And so a lot of people have commerce mixed up with common law, and you cannot mix them. It's either you're commerce or you're in common law, and it's not the both. And there's a lot of, again, this is all coming from the Vatican, and so there's Jesuits out there that are putting out all sorts of disinformation. And so to some extent, I don't blame you, but the bottom line is that I'm not interested in babysitting anybody, and we all have to be the captain of our own destiny. And so we all have to do our own homework and know who we are. We have to know who we are. It's a way of life. It really is. There's a lot of things you have to do, and so you just don't wake up in the morning and say, oh, I'm going to be sovereign today, because that's not how it works. It's a way of life. You have to quit using a Social Security number. You have to open bank accounts without Social Security numbers. You have to do everything without that, and you have to notice your public servants that you're the king, and so it's not something that's going to happen overnight. So you have to be patient with yourself as well.
Yeah, and like the key is you have to do your research, and it is confusing. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that mix and match, like you said, commerce into common law and different things, and I'm still trying to wade my way through a lot of this stuff. And uh, yeah, do your research. I mean, really, you've got to know it in order to be able. If you do get pulled over, you got to be able to tell them what's going on. And you can't do that by saying, oh, well, this, that, and, this guy was telling me about such and such, and you don't have any authority. That's not going to fly. I mean, you have to know what you're talking about. So we are pretty much out of time. Turtle, you have a last comment there?
Live, love, laugh, and stand strong, everyone. And that's it.
All right. Well, we will see you all on Sunday. I'm sure I will be on a couple of the roundtables. We have, let's see, tomorrow night we're going to have the show with Tara that I may show up on. Let's see, Brain Gym is on Sunday. We have a roundtable Saturday. We have Glenn's show on Sunday. You want to give out the time for your show there, Glenn?
On Sunday, it is 7 o'clock Eastern Time, 4 o'clock Pacific, I guess, eh?
Yep, and I am on at 10 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Pacific until midnight. Midnight Central, 10 p.m. Pacific. And that would be 4 in the morning UK time, if I remember correctly. And we will see you all whenever we see you. Have a good night.